Welcome to another episode of Green and Gritty.
We are 4 master's students trying to make environmental education a little more accessible.
We are so excited that you joined us today in our little corner of the internet.
So stick around. This is going to be a fun episode. Hello, everybody. God, it feels like we've been away for quite a bit of time, so we're just exploding with excitement for this episode. Today, we're going to be talking about something we all know and love, or not know and don't love, but fast fashion. So when we say fast fashion, what we really mean is the cheap, trendy clothing you see in stores that is all based on current trends and celebrity culture and catwalk fashion. And the idea of fast fashion is to get the newest styles on the market as fast as possible so that consumers can keep up with trends while they're hot. And then, of course, this just leads to discarding them once the trends aren't in anymore. Fast fashion also really plays into the idea that outfit repeating is like a fashion faux pas, and you're sort of an outsider if you're not up to date with the newest trendy clothing. And we'll definitely dive into this more in a couple minutes, but it's incredible how big of a player fast fashion is in terms of not only toxic standards of beauty, but also the toxic system of overproduction and consumption that has led to fashion being one of the largest polluters in the world. And this is something else I really wanted to touch on. It's the social and environmental costs of endorsing and supporting fast fashion. But before we get into all that, I think it's really important to talk about how fast fashion actually came to be. So flashback a bit to the 1800s, we had the Industrial Revolution, which obviously introduced a ton of new technology like the sewing machine. And the introduction of the sewing machine meant that clothes became easier, quicker, and cheaper to make. And dressmaking shops started popping up everywhere in order to cater to the more middle classes. But a lot of these dressmaking shops used garment workers or home workers, which led to the emergence of sweatshops, which meant mass production of cheap and easily changeable clothing on the rise. Fast forward to the 1960s and 70s when trend cycles started speeding up and clothing became the more prominent form of expression. This is when certain styles really started to take off. So in the late 1990s and 2000s, low-cost fashion had just reached its peak. Online shopping was booming, and fast fashion retailers like H&M, Zara, and Topshop took over the high street category, and everyone was hooked on fast fashion. These brands took all the looks, all the designs from, the top fashion names and reproduced them really quickly and cheaply, and everyone was finally able to get on-trend clothing like in instant.
So to jump in real quick, Taylor, I just wanted to say, so trends had a major influence on business success and, of course, the direction of self-expression. But with the combination of the Industrial Revolution and new market opportunities for European stores who were entering the United States, brands such as Zara had the advantage of marketing themselves as getting consumers fast, fashionable garments. So their mission to do this was to only take 15 days for a garment to go from the design stage to being sold in stores. And this was coined by the New York Times, which ultimately became another trend. And fast fashion was off to the races.
My biggest thing is, why 15 days? Like, why did they need to make it 15 days? What's the rush?
The rush is the trends.
Yeah.
I know, 15 days.
Because it's like you got to get it in, like, oh my God, we should research how long a trend usually lasts. Let me do that, and then I can throw that in there.
That's a good idea. I guess it makes sense. It's like when you see Fashion Nova, like Kylie Jenner will have her designer whip her up something really sexy, and the next thing you know, you can find like it in 17 different colors on Fashion Nova, like within a week.
Yeah. I said, how long is a trend cycle? And it goes 20 years.
Oh my God.
That's outdated.
No. Oh, you know what they say? It's usually like seasonal.
I was about to say, do you remember when like Fringe was a thing for all of 3 months and then Fringe is never again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
I wonder if social media has made this worse.
Yeah,
Definitely.
TikTok has made it worse. I'm telling you.
Or like
Instagram has made it worse.
that's what I was thinking. How no one wants to wear the same outfit on Instagram.
Yeah.
Or it's like, oh, I wore that in like 2 posts ago.
Yeah.
I've heard people say this.
Literally,
And
yeah.
not even influencers.
Yeah, exactly. So now think about how fast a trend cycle is, like a season at most. So if the turnover is that quick, imagine its global impact, which is what I really want to get into. Fast fashion's impact on the planet, it's huge. Like the pressure to reduce cost and speed up production time means that environmental consideration is almost null. The negative impacts are almost endless, but the biggest impacts include the use of toxic textile dyes, which, by the way, make the fashion industry the second largest polluter of clean water globally. The use of cheap textiles such as polyester, which is derived from fossil fuels and therefore contributes to global warming and adds microplastics to our oceans when we wash them. Or cotton, which requires crazy amounts of water and pesticides in developing countries, which also increases the risks of drought and creates huge amounts of stress on water basins. And not to mention the constant speed and demand means there's also increasing stress on other environmental issues such as land clearing, biodiversity, soil quality, and the speed at which the garments are produced also means that more clothes are thrown away by consumers directly into landfill. Aside from all the environmental costs, fast fashion also has a very big impact on humans, from garment workers in sweatshops to farmers who work with the toxic chemicals used in fast fashion products. But mainly it has a really, really big impact on consumers themselves, because the whole idea of fast fashion encourages throwaway culture simply because it is not built to last through trend cycles, and therefore leads us to believe that we need to shop more to stay on top of these trends, which creates a constant sense of need and dissatisfaction, and also really heavily plays into the toxic standards of beauty that I mentioned earlier. Obviously, it's super easy to say, like, yeah, boycott big fast fashion brands and shop secondhand and shop ethically, but the root of it all is the question of why are consumers so deeply attached to fast fashion? Is it the sense of satisfaction we get when we tap our cards or click confirm purchase? Or is it the sense of inclusion we feel when we're dressed in the same style as the celebrity we like? Or is it simply because it's affordable and it's highly accessible and it's pretty much the only option for a lot of people? I mean, these questions are very critical to dissect, and I'm hoping our discussions today can be guided by these thoughts, because we have a hell of a lot to unpack here.
I think another notable question would also be not so much like why are consumers so deeply attached to fast fashion, but why is the textile fashion garment industry so attached to this fast cycle where they are clearly labeled as a big polluter, especially in the 3 main areas that you just touched upon. But how come they aren't more inclined, or maybe they are, how come there isn't more evidence of them being part of the solution to slow down this fashion cycle and make it more like affordable? Because I know for me, I don't have like I don't have like the option as much to shop from non-brand, like big brand stores, because they just offer things that I can afford, that I know are going to last and have like a higher quality and actually fit my body, because I don't have the like straight fit. I'm like, nothing's proportionate for me. So that's my problem, and then I get like linked into this vicious cycle.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I also think that the increased use of social media plays a massive role into this. We see ever-changing fashions. We kind of discussed this earlier, but we see these changing fashions and a lot of shame towards things that are not in style per se anymore, which is I would say a newer concept, because before it was more, hey, this is out, this is new, this is really cool. But now I notice a lot of shaming per se of items that are considered out of date, or you're not in style, or you're not hip in those clothes. So I think that's a newer part of the issue. Not that consumerism is new, but the shaming factor, I would say.
That shaming factor plays a lot into what I was saying about a sense of satisfaction and the sense of inclusion you feel, when you have the new and up-to-date clothes. It's like, if you don't have those trendy clothes, it's like you feel bad. I can't say this because I don't believe it. I don't believe that you should feel bad about yourself if you don't have true trendy clothing, you know? Like,
no, and that's cool that, like,
I don't know.
I know. I get what you're saying.
You shouldn't, but also this is like,
it's like how society
we're
works,
able
but
to
it's
kind
like,
of we've grown up now from when these trends and when you have a lot more shame towards you was like played more of effect, because I know growing up, like not only
high school days,
high school, middle school, like I transferred from a private school where you had a uniform to a public school. Like I had no idea what was in and what was out. I remember 4th grade, my first day, I showed up in like camo pants and this green top that had like a pink graphic with like 3 different monkeys on it, and it was a pink top. But I was so excited because I'm like, this is sick and everything fits and I look good. And then I walked into like school in the playground and I got these weird looks. I'm like, oh, it's fine. I'm just the new kid. But like it seemed like nothing I could do, nothing I could wear was right. And then I was just nervous about everything I was wearing. But now when I'm older, I can say it doesn't matter anymore. But I think it's hard, especially with like the social media impact too. It's like this is all you see. It's what your like world revolves around, and you don't know how to like. You just don't know how to like that it's okay to like not wear what's in style.
Right.
I think you brought up a lot of really good points. There's also a few things in like what Taylor was talking about earlier. There's 2 things that really stuck out to me. One of the things that you mentioned was like when your clothing became an like personal expression, and like when that transitioned and people started to put a lot of value into that. Totally reminded me of just which I think we'll get into later, which is a lot about like identifying with like how you wear or what you wear and like how you express yourself. Because I remember in elementary school, like I was already not included. Like I was on the outskirts for various reasons. Hella dork, it's fine. So to embrace that, I also refused to wear anything that like the cool kids were wearing, which then I'm like, why am I being bullied? Because I was like actively looking for ways to like not be included. But I remember so like the Taylor, when you were then mentioning you remembered that exact outfit that you wore. I remember that I every summer would go to an arts and crafts store because there was a lady that sold clothes that she painted. So it was like reused clothes that she painted and everything was unique.
Wow. Oh my
and like
God.
I would only wear those. And like it was great art, but it was different, you know, like it was different.
Well,
and so that's what I wore every single day.
The first pair of jeans that I remember falling in love with were these bright blue pair. It wasn't like jean blue. It was like a neon navy blue, which is a weird color combination, but it was like a nice bright dark blue. And I wore those to school. And then I would wear like these like neon colored shoes that I then dubbed like my concert shoes, because I would go and see if I could get bands to sign them. And that's what I wore. So
and you remember, and like
did.
As a part of your you know how some people are like, oh, you have childhood memories, but it's weird how our clothes make such an impact on like what we remember. Maybe it's not an impact of what we remember, but it's weird that what we put on our bodies somehow is so pivotal.
It's fun.
But
It
like
going back
defines
then.
the moment that you were in at that time. Because I remember like when I went to my first concert, it was Justin Bieber and I was in the 6th grade and I was wearing like these like really, really tight skinny jeans that had like super big rips in them, and like that was like just becoming the big thing, and my dad was pissed about it. He hated them. But then I also had like a Justin Bieber like tight t-shirt on, and I was like, this is oh my God. And I also had like a headband that I made. Yeah, but I wore it like this, like around my forehead, and I was like this is the coolest I've ever been. I loved it.
I love that.
So clearly clothes means a lot to us for whatever reason. It's
Right.
a huge so fast fashion, maybe that's an added reason as to why it's succeeded so much, is it's become such a critical point of like who we are. But then the other thing you said, Taylor, was being an outfit repeater. I'll always remember Lizzie McGuire movie when Kate goes up to Lizzie at graduation. She goes, "Lizzie McGuire, you are an outfit repeater." And I remember hearing that and I was like, oh my God, she's an outfit repeater. But that's okay, right? And then I was like, oh no.
Lizzie's life is over.
But like as a young kid, why should I care about that?
Yeah.
Or why was it a thing?
You know what's weird, or not weird? Well, first of all, I never watched this Lizzie McGuire movie, but I did used to count the days in between when I would repeat an outfit so no one would remember, because I realized I was really aware of what people were wearing and when and how often and when they wore them. So then I would like kind of keep track of when I would wear an outfit and when I could repeat and what I could match it with, so that no one would think I was like repeating outfits.
Huh?
Yeah, I still do it to this day. Just out of habit at this point.
I guess this kind of goes into my question for y'all for the day is, so we were just talking about clearly clothes, huge impact on us and who we are as people and all that kind of stuff. So then when did you first understand what fast fashion was or what it meant for the environment? So those are two kind of separate questions.
I like that.
But I'd like to turn that over to you guys, or you folks, sorry.
The way I was thinking is that fast fashion is still kind of a new thing, at least to us, like given that we were born in the 90s and that's kind of when fast fashion was getting its feet on the ground. That's kind of all we've ever known. So I don't know if I can pinpoint a direct moment that my first like moment with fast fashion was and what it meant for the environment. I can say though that I remember when I was in university, I became like almost hyper aware of how bad fast fashion was for the environment. And I remember it was in second year and I just stopped buying anything new altogether. Like it was like for that 1 year, I was so into it and I just shopped secondhand. I shopped everything Value Village, everything Plato's Closet, everything Talese was the one near my school. And it was just like, I was so scared. I was like, I can't believe this. Like it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
The impacts it has and to such a grand scale, you know? So I think generally it's been with us since we were born in our lives. That's all we've ever known.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't even think about that, but it's true. Like I haven't known any other way than like I even remember like as a kid like looking at the magazines, seeing what people were wearing, and then being able to find that, and like that's how I did my everything. I'm probably gonna cut that out, but anyways.
Keep it in because that's really true. Because that's what I would do too, and I would be like, "Where can I get this for $10 instead of 10,000?" You know?
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say like I would do. Did you guys ever do like the hierarchy? Like it was definitely a hierarchy where I would try and get my stuff at Ardene's or Ardennes because everything costs like $5, or you get the surprise bag and get your trendy jewelry for like $3.
Mm-hmm.
I still get my jewelry from Ardene's sometimes.
And then, but then the cool kids like were going to. I remember, I got ragged on because I wore Old Navy, and my mom was
I used to refuse to walk into Old Navy because I'm like, I can't go in there because people won't be friends with me if they see me coming out with the bag.
Well, my mom was like, you can get 3 flip-flops for $5, so you're going to be wearing flip-flops also. You know, the kind that don't stay on your feet and give you
that's where
blisters.
that's where I got mine from Ardene's or Walmart.
And then we would get our clothes from Old Navy, and we were like, they're clothes. Like you're fine, you're a kid. It doesn't mean anything, but it meant something because I'd be going to Ardene's and Old Navy, and then there would be the kids that like were wearing Abercrombie, and my mom's like, I'm not spending $65 on a sweater for you. You're gonna ruin it.
And that was back then too. So
yeah. But sorry, I didn't mean to take that in a weird direction. But I don't know about y'all, but I didn't actually equate fast fashion with environment until very recently, because whenever I thought of fast fashion, I was always thinking more like in terms of ethics and ethical clothing and stuff. So my first introduction to fast fashion was mainly just in the context of unethical work environments that are typical in like fast fashion companies. So honestly, whenever I thought about it, my reasoning for avoiding fast fashion was because I was trying to avoid child labor, extreme work conditions, and like sweatshops. And those were the things that I thought of. And then in 2013, there was that, there was the...
Rana Plaza?
Pardon?
Was it Rana Plaza in Bangladesh or no? Or was that 2006?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. There's been multiple.
Yeah.
But I was thinking of the... in Cambodia, an H&M factory collapsed, and 23 workers were injured. And then, so that was I know it was that one because we were talking about it in class, that 2013 one. But there have been many collapses and poor work environments. But we talked about it in class, and we talked about the supply chain for these brands. And then it wasn't until someone did a presentation on carbon footprint in that class that I even thought, oh yeah, my clothes would have a carbon footprint. And that's the first time that I ever even thought.
The footprint is crazy to think about with, I mean, not just clothes, like everything, but like, speaking of clothes right now, like I was reading something, it was like, denim doesn't break down for, what was it, like 300 years or 100 years?
Something ridiculous.
It's long.
Yeah, and like, that's more than anyone's lifetime. That's insane.
Be curious to see if they do a study like on denim, because that's like the real stuff with nothing added into it. But what about the stuff that has whatever
Not the
added
fast
into
fashion
it?
synthetic
Yeah, to make it like
denim.
all stretchy and bullshit.
See, those are,
Plastics, the
I love those
polyesters.
though. They suck everything in.
No, but then after like a few hours of wearing them, they're too big and they fall down.
True.
For me.
That's very true.
But I'm similar in the fact that I didn't really put together what fast fashion was, even though I was aware of the new outfits and having to like do my little calendar repeat situation. But weirdly enough, I was really aware of the microplastics within face wash, which is fun because it still connects to fast fashion, which is my little story. But specifically within like face wash products, those little beads, and even in toothpaste, the little beads that you think, oh,
Yeah.
this is like giving me some extra power to cleanse or exfoliate, what have you. And then I was trying to pitch it to my mom. I was like, hey, I should get this product because it will clean my face, and it says I'll wake up and be energized in the morning
Right.
and you won't be late anymore. And then she said, no, Taylor, that's not how it works. It's going to end up in the ocean anyway. And I was like, no, it's just another like motherly lie you tell me so I don't buy anything. But then fast forward to my thesis in undergrad, where I'm researching the effects of plastic and everything, and I realized she was telling the truth. And so that's how like my journey with fast fashion really took forward, because I don't shop a lot. I try and budget my shopping trips so it's only like a couple times a year, really like on the big seasons change, so when it gets cold and then when it gets hot. And it's just to make sure I have like some staple items now. But before, I used to love like doing back to school, Black Friday, like Christmas shopping, because we were always at a hockey tournament. So I definitely like participated more than I'd care to admit, but it happens when you're young and you like to try and wear clothes that fit in. But that's my anecdote for now. I kind of want to get into more of like the gritty aspect of fast fashion. Specifically, I'm going to be talking a little bit about, or I'm going to be pulling from a report done by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation back in 2017. It's titled A New Textiles Economy, Redesigning Fashion's Future. It's on their website. I'll also be linking it in our website as well, so if you're curious and want to read more, you are able to. It does a really good job demonstrating the full effects of the value chain. The value chain is the added benefits on top of the supply chain. So there's a difference, and sometimes it gets a little confusing when the two are used almost interchangeably. But the supply chain involves the buyers and sellers, and the value chain gives you the competitive advantage on why we should like pick your business, basically. So now what I want to get into is waste. So the current method of the textile production is based off of the traditional linear model, the make, take, waste, which aligns perfectly with the speedy rates of fast fashion seasons, meaning that resources are extracted for production are only used for a short period of time before they end up in landfills or incineration. It's actually estimated that more than half of the produced materials end up in landfills annually. So that an example of that would be in Australia, they had a recorded of 50,000 tons of unwanted clothing that ended up in landfills every year. And also the take-back programs that we've seen quite recently, the past couple of years, it was reported that back in 2016, only 0.1% of all clothing collected by charities and take-back programs were recycled into new textile fiber. So already we're using a lot more materials and not being really responsible about their end of life and not really having a solid plan in place currently with the model that we're used to.
0.1%.
Yeah.
And that's including take back programs that okay.
So yeah, that yeah.
I'm sweating already.
Yeah, it's an uneasy fact. So it just kind of shows that this is like a big player, the textile industry, in how much they produce and how much is just simply thrown away, unfortunately. So I want to identify what materials are commonly used. It'd be mainly non-renewables, such as oil for synthetic fibers, fertilizers to grow cotton, and chemicals to produce dyes and finished fibers and textiles, similar to what Taylor was outlining earlier. Additionally, I was most shocked about this. So when I found out about microplastics and the big pileup in the ocean, I was really curious to see the water play into textiles and fashion to see the effect it had on it. So it's reported that 93 billion cubic meters of water is used annually, which contributes to some water scarce regions. So that scares me shitless, to be honest, because I just think about how powerful that is and how much that's being used in dyes and in the chemicals and then putting out into our ecosystems. And it's a lot. But on top of that, an area everyone should be aware of is how much greenhouse gases are being emitted. So back in 2015, there was an additional of 1.2 billion tons of CO2 emitted from production. So the negative impact between oil, carbon emissions, and water is what I'm going to call the trifecta of waste, which is the only positive spin I can really put on this because it has a scary name. And it makes you want to pay attention to it. So there was a great graphic in this report by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. It compared the 2015 versus the predicted 2050 rates of resource consumption, which was, like I said, the 98 million tons, which would grow to 300 million tons. The carbon emissions in 2015 was 2% of the textile industry total, but in 2050 it would grow to 26% that was emitted. And then of course, the amount of microfibers found in the ocean totaled 22 million were added. So this has been attributed to a major cause of plastics entering the ocean. And plastics, what should be noted is that even though it breaks down, it's never gone. It's similar to that science experiment. I'm not sure if you guys did it back in high school when you would put salt in water and you'd stir it and then you can't see it anymore, but the salt is still there. So the salt, when you first dump the salt into the water, that's the plastic. You can still see the plastic, it's there. But when you stir it, it just gets smaller and smaller until it looks almost invisible and the water is just clear again. That's similar to how when plastic breaks down, you may not see it, but it's so small. And that's why they're called microplastic. So I want to pause because that was a lot of information to throw. And I just want to clarify the word I've been using, microplastics. So over the past few years, there's been growing awareness of the plastic pollutions, especially in the oceans and local water, such as lakes. So microplastics are, as I just explained, small plastic pieces, aka plastic debris, that measure less than 5 millimeters long, which is about the size of a sesame seed. Comparatively, microfibers are microplastic subgroup that are mostly found from shedding during the laundry process, so from clothes. Does that make sense? Did I explain that okay?
That's a really good explanation.
Cool. Because I found that and I was ooh, I need to make sure I explain myself because I know the two terms. I've used them interchangeably by accident, but I just wanted to make sure that it's clear. So, because our clothing is made out of synthetic fibers, this has become a growing issue. So the majority of our clothing, 60%, is made from polyester, a synthetic fiber, because it uses less water than cotton and does not require pesticides for production. So simply because it's cheaper in cost. Not great, because as we all know, just because things are cheaper doesn't mean it's better for our environment. So on top of that, the CO2 released from it and the waste it leaves behind is a monster in itself. So for instance, according to Greenpeace, one piece of clothing can release 700,000 fibers in a single wash. And when these fibers leave our washing machines, they end up in our waterways and or are swallowed by sea life, which, if we then eat sea life, are inside ourselves.
God.
Yeah, so that's why I don't eat seafood anymore.
I was gonna say, I'm just imagining the sushi I ate yesterday after you saying that.
Even in the documentaries, it's really sad because you can see in some documentaries the birds that eat plastic debris, and then when they die and they decompose, you can see just all the plastic inside their system, and it's not food, but they don't know the difference. So it's
or like the fishermen who like pull fish out of the sea and they're like dead fish, but they cut it open.
Yeah, exactly.
There's plastic bags like fully inside of the fish, and it's just like, the fuck?
And that's massive pieces, let alone the accumulation of these tiny ones.
Oh my God, of course.
And what it could do to them, like, reproduce. Oh. I was going to say, I've never felt less guilty about not doing my laundry.
Yeah, so
me not being an adult is a good thing.
Good win right now.
But there is a solution for like the consumer base, which I'm going to get into, so we can still do our laundry and be relatively clean. So the distinction between microfibers and microplastics is important, is because I wanted to outline that although plastic pollution can come from a variety of products, a report done by the IUCN, so the International Union for Conservation of Nature, calculated that 35% of microplastic pollution comes from washing synthetic textiles, which is equivalent to Europe and Central Asia dumping 54 plastic bags worth of microplastics per person per week into the oceans. So this is a really, really big problem that is not really talked about, and instead all the arguments have been drawn attention to straws and plastic bags and not to one of the main contributors, which is why like we should know like there's this problem, yes, and that straws and plastic bags, are part of the problem, but also there's this other big chunk that we're not really talking about as much. I don't find anyway, unless like you really dive into it, pun intended. So, sorry, that was a bad timing. But one possibility to reduce this is right at home, which is by altering our aftercare of our clothing. So, for example, washing at a lower temperature, using a mesh laundry bag to catch threads, and rely on tumble dryers less often. So, I know that I have been using mesh laundry bags since I started doing my own laundry, but not because of this reason, but because I was told that it would help keep my clothes in better condition if they didn't rub against like harder clothing. Like for me, I only do 2 loads. I do everything and then like one white sweater that has one patch of color on it, and I know that the color will bleed because it's happened to me before, and that's like those are my 2 loads of laundry. So when I'm washing, like for instance, like my gym pants with my jeans, I'll put all my gym clothes in these laundry bags to keep them like not as like rough, but it's cool to know that this also helps catch these extra threads and does a part in that.
Interesting. And you were saying a dryer also contributes to this, right?
Yeah, so think of like the lint that your dryer catches.
Right, exactly.
That's an example of what could be caught in the mesh bag. Because we don't really see it in the washing process because, again, the whole like water
it dilutes.
I've been air drying 90% of my clothes for the past 4 years just out of like negative problems with my dryer, like without even realizing. So that's great news to hear.
Yeah, you can't see, but behind me is a full rack of clothing air drying right now.
That's
because
my
I
life
struck a pair of jeans.
I love that.
And now I just air dry. But that's all I really wanted to say. So if you're interested in learning a bit more, the cases I will be linking in our episode description on our website. So one is done by Imogen E. Napper and Richard C. Thompson, where they examined how many fibers and which types of fibers were released in the wash. That's a really cool one because then you can examine your own clothes and maybe shop differently if you are able to. Another is by Greenpeace, which outlines the production and consumption harms of fast fashion. And lastly, the report I mentioned by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation will also be linked. It's a really good educational read, and you can also see which brands are working towards a new future of moving away from the traditional linear model of waste to a more circular one. So to wrap up, I'm not saying that, and neither is the research, that the solution is all based on the consumers, but there is serious change that can be done and should be done in the manufacturing and production of these supply chains. And then since the textile industry hits the big 3, the trifecta, they seriously need to address how their business models are impacting our ecosystems and how to move forward in a more sustainable manner.
Taylor, I thought that was a really informative way to learn about the ways that we don't even know that we're contributing, like beyond just buying something at H&M. And I like that you kind of laid out how we can make it a difference just at home, even if it's small, because those are super easy ways, like transitioning to air drying, for example, my clothes. It seems strange, it seems more difficult, but it actually made my clothes last a lot longer. So I'm glad you shared that, and that it does make a difference, even if it's little.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you liked what I was saying, because it does, like, even though, like I said, like it's not just all based on the consumer. With this, there are small things that we can do to show that we care, and we are, like, it's our own little way to show that we want everything to be accountable for not
exactly
shitting on the planet.
It's also really important. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think it's also really important that you said this, because it brings to light the importance of looking at the bigger picture of everything behind what you're buying. Who made this? Where was it made? What did it take to get here? What materials is it made of? How does that impact the environment? You know, like, everything plays into something, and there's always going to be consequences for what you do, but but seriously, like, it even plays into, like, life cycle analysis. Like, where is this going to end up in 5 months, 5 years?
I love life cycle analysis.
I know, so do I. Let's do a whole episode on that next. Like, I
love it.
But anyways, I really, really think that's a great point you bring up, because taking into consideration the before, the during, and the after part of your products that you're buying is really, really critical to, you know, ethical buying, sustainable development, everything. It needs to be thought of more often and more in a general society.
But then even, like, us knowing, like, from, like, sustainable buying point of view, for businesses to know how they can improve their supply chain to then up, like, how they can add more value to their product is, like, the whole benefit of, like, understanding the impact of everything.
Well, there's also just a lot of, like, really good examples of we're getting creative, and I think that's a really good thing for the green sector, is like we have all of these problems coming up, but people are trying to get creative. So, like, I know there's like a jewelry company that's, like, fishing out plastics from the ocean to make bracelets to then raise awareness and raise money. Yeah,
it's called For Ocean. I bought one.
I have a shirt from there. It's my pajama shirt.
Right? Like,
I'm the only one who doesn't know about this. Oh my god.
It's a really good brand.
They're cute bracelets,
definitely look into it. Yeah, I love it. I think it's so important that you bring up these things and that we need to address them, because unless we acknowledge it and we're faced with the hard facts of, like, of the waste, of the water impacts, of the dyes and everything, like, we can't get to the next stage of, like, okay, we fucked up. What do we got to do to fix this? We got to get creative. We got to get innovative. And, like, this is where humanity can shine, right? Is when we really show what we can do by reversing that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's what we've said a million times. We're at, like, the pinnacle of whether we're going to overcome climate change and become more sustainable, or we're just going to crash and burn.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is when things need to start emerging more. And we're seeing it, but needs to pick up the pace a little bit.
Hopefully slow and steady wins the race. We'll win the race of educating our leaders to make these, like, time-sensitive decisions to really get the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm. No, those are really good points. And I think what my rant is about how a lot of these solutions that are provided and available and are awesome have, like, a lot of underlying issues. So I kind of discussed this a little bit in a previous episode. I touched on it a little bit. Classism in this, in thrifting and in general in sustainability. So I discussed specifically the gatekeeping of this. So the major issue with this is the classism part of it. Although we can, like, try to understand how to prevent fast fashion, and we can critique it and provide options to be more sustainable, which we all appreciate and we love. But a lot of these options, beyond the ones you were saying, Taylor, because those are really cool, but more in the way to not shop at H&M, for example, are often difficult to achieve on a small, or even if you have an adequate budget. So, like, I know a lot of people, friends and family, who try to make a change, and they're working full time, they're doing pretty well, and they're still struggling to find affordable options because, again, we still have this culture of, if I spend $100 on a t-shirt, what's going to happen when it's out of style in the next 3 months, as we were just saying, right? So it's very difficult if you don't have a cash flow coming in to make these decisions. So that's just an example of it being an issue with an adequate budget. Because fast fashion is affordable. It's for the most part accessible. It's online. It's in a store very close to your house. There's many locations, free returns, free shipping. There's lots of ways that make it affordable and accessible to anyone to use. So those are really good reasons for people to use it on a low budget or with people who are not with a lot of money. And when we discuss anti-fast fashion and creating a shift to slow fashion, we're being inherently a little bit classist. Not that I'm criticizing you guys. I'm criticizing the movement. I know it sounds...
I get where you're coming from.
I know it sounds crazy. How can, like, us trying to be environmentally friendly mean that I'm a classist or you're a classist? Well, simple terms, being able to make that choice shows how this option is available to you quite easily. And this transition takes money and oftentimes time in itself, right? We hear all the time, I quit using fast fashion, or I spent 6 hours in the thrift store to find this dupe, which are amazing options, and I love hearing it. But we can't vilify those who do not have those same resources of time and money, who still want to have stylish or new clothes, right? Like, it's very difficult to criticize people who don't have those 6 hours to rummage through a thrift store, or, you know what I mean, or the money to spend on that sweater. It's a problem, right? Like, it's very difficult to be able to say, it's easy to say, oh, well, you know, if you do this, this, and that, but a lot of these solutions are, again, like you said, they're based in time and money, so it's hard. And to flip the switch, this is something, like I was saying before in my segment on gatekeeping, a lot of white middle to high class people are now glorifying these switches, right? Like how I just said, oh, I made this change in my life, and I'm reusing and recycling clothing, and I'm thrifting, and I'm buying from local shops. Again, I really do appreciate that effort, and I think that's awesome. But again, we have to understand the demographic that are able to do this. When people have, and another thing I was going to say is, a lot of people of lower socioeconomic status have been doing this for a long time. So, for example of this also plays into being immigrants, right? So a lot of immigrants have been buying local or reusing or passing down for many, many years. It's a part of a lot of people's culture and just a way of their life. And it's never been applauded or understood as a sustainable option or anything like that. Like Taylor A was saying, that it's sometimes been made fun of, really. And now when we see this different class and race of people taking this on, it has a different meaning and it has a different association. So that's some of the issues that I have with that. There's actually a blog post from Just Irenic. I think that's how you pronounce it. I want to say the quote because it really sat with me when I was doing the research for this episode. To understand the intersectional nature of sustainable fashion, we need to understand privilege. Privilege means having power over others and accepting that the world isn't equal because of the imbalance found in wealth, job opportunities, healthcare, housing, and protection, just to name a few. These systemic issues are closely linked to gender, race, socioeconomic status, and our role in benefiting from exploitation and racism in a developed country. The interconnection is important to understand in the context of understanding of how we as consumers benefit from privilege within the fashion industry. I will link this blog post in the blog itself on the website, because there are a ton of other great points that play into what I'm trying to discuss today. And there's a lot of like snobbery associated with this. Vocal Media is another article that used this term snobbery when we discuss fast fashion. Just one more quick quote just to pull it together here. It's like the liberal elite friend who boasts about their ethically sourced green tea while the single mother has to scrape coins to buy school lunches. You can't judge working class people for choosing cheaper alternatives, nor can you expect them to pay ridiculous prices for an ethically produced t-shirt. When I read that, it just it's a slap in the face, right? Like, it's a reality check, and it just really plays into how we deliver these criticisms and understand them when discussing fast fashion or anything sustainability moving forward. So my main point is we cannot blame people for not making the switch. It's hard. Being sustainable is expensive. Thankfully, it is becoming more mainstream with more options for different price points. Thrifting is a part of that. But if you're still unsure about what I'm saying or want to learn more, I also have another article that I'll link by Lexington Online about classism as a whole. So that was my rant. I hope it was helpful for anyone to understand. And I'm just curious what you guys think about it.
I think it was good. You always do a really good job, in my opinion, like explaining like how society's built around these issues and how they has like designed these issues and how people still interacting and participating like within them. Because it's like, I don't know, like what you just said, like you really can't, like the example you just gave with the liberal elite friend versus the single mother, like you really can't judge like each person's like individual experience, and they're doing their best. You have to really like look at the cards that were presented to choose our options from, and the cards being like the businesses that are giving us our options, and like what are they doing that is like not allowing us to all participate as responsible, sustainable citizens like in our world. Because it's not like a clothing shouldn't be destructive. Like back in the day, like you would just wear what you would wear to be warm and to protect yourself from the elements, and then it has evolved into how we like express ourselves. So how can we still express ourselves while still just having the basics?
Definitely makes sense. Because I was thinking, one of the things that one of my first thoughts was, this is just another example of how consumerism is used to put us against each other, rather than, you know, how come a single mother has to scrape coins? Like, that is an issue we need to be analyzing too. And like, I don't want to bring it too big, but then, you know, like living wages and that kind of stuff. But then also talking about how come we're so like conditioned to paying these cheap prices for unethical, and then how come we're so unused to the real cost of ethically sourced sustainable clothing. Like, that was a norm that could have been set, and it could, like, there's been opportunity. There's just so much to it, right? Where it's like somehow this has become, again, it's a versus issue where we're looking at each other and putting blame on each other or judging, right? And it's like, how did we get here? That's the real thing we should be judging. How did we get to this point?
It's like, who should we be judging? These corporations, like, you know what I mean?
Not each other.
It's really just like feeds into the whole thing. Like, I know I'm ranting now, but it's like, how did it end up that the 1% is sitting comfortably and not a part of this debate, or not feeling the effects, or not getting attacked in any way? And the rest of us, I know there are still levels within the 99% remaining of us, like I was mentioning before, but how did it come to us taking this on or shaming each other, right? It's very hard for me to wrap my head around, for sure.
Sorry, I don't know if I mean to go on, but there's also a lot of animosity and jealousy too. It's because as much as I hate it, then sometimes I'll like go on Instagram and I'll see people, you know, living that lifestyle, and I'm like, but I want it, but I hate it, but I kind of want it.
Exactly,
and then I feel gross.
And I think social media plays a huge role into that. I know I keep mentioning that, but it's like, I don't know what has happened over the past 5 years even. Like, I know social media has been a thing for a lot longer, but I do feel like our usage and our connection has gone up a lot.
Okay, so without being too triggering, because I'm sure we'll all get the like hot sweats as we discuss this, but like, I have 2 questions for you. And the first one is, how does fast fashion make you feel?
Oh, okay. I'm going to be real transparent here.
Do it.
Fast fashion makes me feel good.
Okay.
For like 0.2 seconds, and then I am just like, shit, what have I done? You know? Mm-hmm. Like, overwhelmed with guilt. And then I start thinking about the impact that it has, you know, long term and externally, how I'm not seeing it. And I think it's just hard because, like we were saying earlier, like it's so affordable. and it's so easy to get.
How does fast fashion make you feel good? Because I totally understand all this.
It satisfies the need for new clothes and the need for just like just getting new things. It satisfies that desire.
Yeah, because I was gonna say that's how it makes me feel too. Or when you want to do something nice for yourself and you find something that makes you feel beautiful or great or
and
sexy,
you're like actually excited about it.
Yeah, and that high. It's it's not really an addiction, but it's a rush. It's in a rush for sure.
Oh yeah.
And then then comes the spiral.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard because it's like you need to find a balance of satisfying that, but also not. I'm gonna say not completely fucking up the planet, but that's so dramatic.
That's true. But it's so true because it makes me feel great. I feel when I find a pair of pants that make me feel like I'm not cursing myself when I look in a mirror, that's an amazing feeling. The thing is, though, I can recreate that feeling in other ways, but fast fashion is easier. If I go on an 8-hour hike, or not an 8, I have done that, but if I go for a 4-hour hike on a nice afternoon, I feel even better than when I buy something new. But do you know how much harder it is for me to go out and do that activity versus... I don't know. That's my privilege.
And that's another point, because it's that's what Taylor was mentioning before, is that it's so hard to find things that fit properly because most clothes aren't made for normal bodies.
That's true.
It's made for the model size body, and it's really tough because I feel like a lot of fast fashion is made with materials that are able to just fit anyone and everyone, and that's one thing that makes it a lot more accessible in that sense, is that it just fits.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel. I don't think I can put one feeling on it because I look at it from the waste point of view. It's similar to how I look at packaging. It's what we have and it's what we use to get what we need for self-expression or need for protection from the element, like jackets, shoes, hats, whatever. Same thing as protecting food when it ships across the world, whatever. So I don't think I can label it as a certain thing. I think if anything, it's just a hyper awareness of my actions, and that just makes me feel like I have to really, really be sure in my decisions, because with the whole clothes not fitting me topic, I never buy pants online. I can research pants online and I can read a bunch of reviews and measure myself, see if it if I fit in between any of the options, but I still have to go to the physical store, the actual store, and then try them on and see if it works. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but I don't have the same rush anymore with buying clothes as I used to, when it's oh, I feel so good in this, because it's becomes such a hassle now to make sure things fit. Does that?
No, that makes sense.
That makes
I don't know.
Complete sense.
That does make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really relate to what you said, the hike thing. I can feel much better and for a longer time if I go have a workout and crush it than I can with a new outfit, because I'm scared I'm gonna rip something or stain something, and then the whole process starts all over again.
It's definitely where we get our values from and where we get our satisfaction from, and I feel it's easy to get fast. That's what Taylor was talking about earlier, fast satisfaction from treating yourself. But that's back to what Danielle was talking about in the previous episodes, where it's no ethical consumption, and it's just consumerism and capitalism really dictating how we find satisfaction and value, which then puts me in an existential crisis, and I'm bawling on the 401.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I just got hot sweats.
Yeah, it makes me feel it's an addiction, to be honest.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why I told myself I can only really shop twice a year, was to not only make sure I budget for it, but then when I do all the research and those the two main seasons that I'll buy for myself, that it's stuff that I actually really want and stuff that I'll actually wear for the majority of that season, if not the whole season, and it hopefully repeat it again if it still lasts. You know?
I'm glad you have healthy coping mechanisms like that. Because I certainly don't when it comes to fashion.
That's just like a few years of like telling yourself to do something though, right? That's been like in the works.
I was gonna say that unless anyone's anything else to add to how it makes you feel, that works perfectly. If Taylor, you wanted to take the reins on my next question, which is what methods or tactics have you used to eliminate fast fashion in your life? Maybe not eliminate, but like kind of
like reduce it,
minimize.
Well, I definitely like I said, like I only shop like a big purchase like twice a year. The small shopping that I do is for honestly like new sports bras, because I wear those more than I wear like a real bra because of how much I work out. Oh, that sounds like a weird flex. That's not a flex.
I love it.
My goodness. I'm like, I think the last sports bra I bought was like 2016, so.
Really? I buy the same one every time because I love the way it fits. Like, different colors, but because they finally released some cool colors. But anyway, the point is, but what's really cool is that my aunt and I are very similar in size, so we kind of like swap clothes sometimes, or like I'll give her a lot of like my old clothes and then I get a lot of her like comfy clothes. So that's like a fun stuff, but I really just think about the price, because when I was in high school, that's when I really got aware of like how much 1 hour of minimum wage pre and post tax it would to cost. Oh my god, how much it would cost to get something and how much I'd have to work as a cashier to get something, and is it really worth it for me? And then a lot of the times it turned into no. So then I started to try and make my closet more of not neutral colors, but more of like staple like basics, but then also with the pop of color for a few like fun sweaters or fun like the occasional fun pair of pants or like a skirt, you know, for more creative looks. But just to make sure I really only had like the basics, and then I would spend really good money on a coat, because I was a commuter student and that was freezing cold and wet and snowy. So that's what I tried to do, just to be really financially responsible with how I spend money with clothes.
I was going to say, one thing that I started when I was younger in high school was I started hiding my clothes, because, okay, that's going to sound really weird. I would...
Like from yourself?
Yeah, so I would put things that weren't in season. So like I wasn't going to wear my tank tops, I wasn't going to wear my shorts or certain t-shirts, they just weren't warm enough. I wasn't going to layer them. I would put them in a trash bag and I'd put them in the basement of the house. And then when it became season again, I would take my trash bag, and it was like I was rediscovering clothes that I hadn't seen. And so it made me re-excited about clothes I already had. And so I did that for like years. And every time I'd go, not every season, but in Canada, you know, we switch up our wardrobes a lot because, you know, fluctuations in weather is a thing. But I'd trek down to the basement and I'd go and I'd get the summer clothes and I'd come back upstairs, and it was the thing. I found that helps, because the other thing too is like the clothes last. They're in good quality, but sometimes people are just not excited about what they own anymore. And I found that was really helpful to like not get bored, because it's still good quality. I can still wear it.
Yeah. I love that, Kendra, because I even just do that, of course, with shoes, because shoes you cannot, like, you're forced to do that. And then I get so re-excited when I switch out the shoes in my closet. So that's a great point. I think that's awesome. I love that, actually.
Sounds like I have a ton of clothes. I don't. that's...
No, it just sounds like a really good tactic.
I do that, but accidentally. Like, I just forget about stuff that is still, like, in the box in my closet, or, like, just, like, I shoved it away a long time ago. I'm like, yeah, I'll wear this on a special occasion, but it's, like, not intentional.
Yeah, like, even when I shop, like, to get out of the, like, special occasion, like, mindset, I would ask myself, like, where I would wear this before I like decided if I was going to buy it or not. And then I'd have to have at least like 1 or 2 instances besides going to class, because going to class no longer really exists, where I would wear it, because I don't have like, because I am in the basement, I can't just like move it from one corner to the other like you can. That would be really cool though, but I can move it from like shelf to shelf, you know, to like get like the eyes, like where you look at it differently. But I like that idea.
Yeah. What other things have y'all done to help minimize your interaction?
I mean, I touched on it earlier. Like, I mentioned that when I was in second year university, I went really, really heavy into thrifting. That kind of dwindled, but I still am very into it. Like, ask anyone, probably 90% of my wardrobe is from Plato's Closet, which is, I guess, what is it called? Like a consignment store? Just like you bring your clothes there, they give you like $2 or $3 for like 5 sweaters. It's a really great deal. But they just have like, they have very in style clothing that people have donated or people have sold to the store technically. And it's just a way to give another life to someone's trash, you could call it, right? So I think that has been my biggest thing to help stop me from buying into fast fashion, but also still gives me that sense of satisfaction and sense of keeping up with the trends. And I always kind of make a point that when I'm going into Plato's, I try and bring a couple things, like empty out my closet. It's like I don't need to keep stuffing my closet full of things. If I'm going and I want to get some new things, I try and bring some old shoes or clothes or hats just back and give it to them instead, So I think that's definitely helped a lot. But like you said, there's an aspect of privilege to doing that. So
I'd be curious to see if like the 4 of us could go do one of those like year challenges where you don't purchase anything new.
Nope.
My mom is doing that right now.
You don't purchase like anything.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, because I've always been really curious to like make a master budget sheet, like once I actually have like an actual income, and to do it to see what the real expenses are and what the additional like extracurricular expenses would be, and just to see like how much you really do save, because I've read some really cool articles about it, but it'd be interesting to see like the actual like real life impact.
Yeah,
especially with like clothes.
I would just say I'm still struggling to adapt to changing myself. What I try to do with my old clothes is pass them down to someone. I always pass them down. Usually style comes around, as we were discussing. Mm-hmm. So things that were not so great for me sometimes feel great for some of my younger cousins. And it was something I got to have when I was younger. So I think that was a great way for me to even reduce how much I bought in high school when I had that available to me. I'm still working on trying to limit. So Kendra, your mom is inspiring me.
Oh my God, yeah, incredibly inspiring. That's like,
yeah.
She's almost gone a full year now. She definitely will if she's gone this far. That's amazing.
Yeah, no, she's a powerful woman. Daniela Lee she's a powerhouse. So that kind of leads us into my wrap up for today, which, discussing fast fashion, sometimes it can be hard to reflect on like our own consumer habits and not feel guilty or overwhelmed and concerned about the future of our planet. It's hard to not talk about fast fashion and let those thoughts really take over. But I will not be leaving y'all on like a bad note. We're gonna try and make some positives out of this thing. So I'm going to make some additional suggestions and some research that I've done on things that we can do moving forward. So first things first is repair and repurpose. If you have clothes already that are still functional but are no longer your style per se, or you're bored with them, find ways to repurpose those items, such as making quilts out of old concert tees, volunteer t-shirts, or travel tees. Now you have a memento that keeps you warm. It's Canada. You're going to need it. Or further, if you're not in Canada, sorry, but, or further reduce your waste by turning old clothes into rags rather than buying paper towels. I always need rags around the house. So cut up that thing that has a hole in it that you're not going to use. Why throw it out, right? One of the things that I read was the most sustainable options are the things you already own. So rather than buying more, even if it's ethical, there's still effort that goes into creating something new. So the most sustainable option are the things you already have. But if you must replace, try looking into sustainable clothing brands. And so the first brand that I'd like to bring attention to is really exciting for Green and Gritty because it's our first partner ever. And it's actually a brand that was started by my friend Tavleen, and it's called Off Trade. So Off Trade is a clothing brand specializing in streetwear. They aim to be an alternative to fast fashion companies, as they want to provide on-trend clothing without the destructive outcomes. So They offer unisex and size-inclusive clothing and accessories, and they have drops at every 4 weeks. So the next drop of their clothing will be November 16th. And actually, you can use the code GRITTY15 for 15% off your order. And this code will be viable from November 16th to the 30th. So that's super exciting. But you know, you might have heard, every 4 weeks, fast fashion, if you're freaking out. No, all the items of clothing in off-trade are items that are reworked from clothing that was going to be going to landfills, and they're turned into one-of-one pieces. So you'll have an item that is completely unique. Off-trade prides themselves in their social impact, which is twofold. One is diverting waste, and the second is providing meaningful employment with fair pay to help lift garment workers in developing countries out of poverty. So super proud of Tavleen and everyone in Off-Trade, and it's really awesome. So you can follow them on Instagram. We're going to put the @ on our website and then potentially in our social medias, and their website is offtradeclothing.com. So that's just one brand, but I'll give you others. So other brands that we like that are sustainable or ethical, different qualifications for each, is Girlfriend, Mate the Label, Armed Angels, 07 Days, Seek Collective, No Nasties, which is great. They don't like plastics. It's No Nasties. Mud Jeans. Anyways, those are great options. Another solution moving forward are microplastic filters for your washer and dryer machines. So Taylor actually talked about this in her segment, and I just found it so interesting. I had to know more. So using fiber catching devices in washing machines can dramatically reduce the amount of microscopic particles that have the potential to enter our marine environment. So the scientists that Taylor mentioned, so Dr. Imogen Napper, so you can find many fiber catching devices for your washing machine at various price points. So you can find them on Amazon, and then you can find some higher end. There was a study done showing that the Lint Love R, it's like Lint Lover, Lint LUV-R, has one of the highest catchment rates at like 87% of your microfibers will be caught, but it's expensive. So you know what you can do? You can double up on that stuff. You can get multiple different devices based off of placement in your washing machine, so you can, catch what one misses and whatnot. Also, if you can't sell your clothes, or if you can't, hand them down, I don't know about y'all, but with my jeans, I feel guilty about throwing out jeans, but I chub rub through them and all of a sudden we have holes. No one wants to thrift a pair of jeans that have holes in the thighs, and also don't really feel comfortable giving that to somebody or selling it. You know what you can do? There are some trade back programs, such as H&M has a fabric return program where you are able to bring clothes that have holes in it or are maybe not in like sellable or rewearable conditions, and they've actually found a way to break down the chemical properties that make up those clothes to then turn it into a new fiber to make new clothes out of. Last but not least is sell to consignment stores if you need to make that coin. I know we're all students, and one of the best ways to try and get some more value out of your clothes while also promoting sustainability is going to stores like the Patch or those types of secondhand stores where you can actually make a little bit of money off of returning your old clothes and putting it back into circulation. But if you want to fight against financial barriers to sustainable clothing, you can also call up your local women's and family shelters in order to donate those clothing that's in good condition directly to people that might need it. Be sure, if you're going to be donating to shelters, call ahead and see what they need, and also check to see what their COVID protocols are, because we just want to make sure everyone's safe.
All right, and if there was anything we talked about today that sparked your interest or got your research juices flowing, head over to our website and you can find the sources we used in today's episode.
And as always, thanks for joining us in our little corner of the internet. You can find us on our Instagram at GreenAndGritty or on our Facebook, which is at GreenAndGritty. We would love to hear from all of our incredibly brilliant listeners.
All right, so this is Green and Gritty signing out.
Bye.